Hello and welcome to We Just Quoting the podcast, but we do more than just quote. This is We Just Quote Wednesday, and today I'll be talking about the Euro finals, Marcus Rashford, racism, hate, and this week's quote of the week, which will be revealed in the podcast. Make sure you stay at the end to get a clue about next week's podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know exactly when a new podcast comes out, and tell a friend to tell a friend to another friend. Now let's get into it. Now, the Euro finals were on Sunday, and I have to talk about it. I have to address it in one way or another, and especially address this series of events that have happened after it. So, I didn't watch the full game. I watched the opening with the dancers and the flags and the national anthem, and that it was really super pretty, and yeah, it just looked really cool. And I watched up until England scored their first goal in the first 2 minutes, which is very impressive. Before I continue, I do want to say congratulations to Italy, because at the end of the day they did win, and they won. Yeah, it's competition and they won, and that win shouldn't be taken away from them. But yeah, so I watched up until the first 2 minutes, and then I kind of switched off. But then when it came to the final penalties, I watched on Chunks's story. He was live streaming, and he live streamed the penalty where, bless his heart, Marcus Rashford missed. And all I could think was, I feel so not sorry for him, just sad for him, because I saw the way he had his head buried between his hands, and he must have been so disappointed in himself. Bless him, It was just one of those situations, and it must have really hurt. It must have really hurt. So it's one of those type of situations. But yeah, it was very unfortunate. And what's really sad and disappointing, not from the players, is that, and I said about this in a previous We Just Quote Wednesday podcast, there'll be a link in the description. Go check it out. I said how I'm not really a football fan, but football seems to bring people together. People are there cheering and supporting their team and who they want to win, and it's like this massive big community. But it's so sad that when there's a loss, how football can bring people together can also tear them apart. Obviously, I'm sure you've all seen by now in the news and stuff, there's been a lot of racism and hate shown to not just Rashford, but to a few of the other players as well. And it's just it's just really sad and really unfortunate. And it's also hate not only to the players, but to black people of the public. I know I saw a story about one girl was killed all because of football. There was been stabbings and all this, and it's just really sad and disgusting. And it boils my blood, really. It really does, because it's like this football that brought everyone together has seemed to tear them apart. But at the same time, it's been nice to see people coming together and showing support and love to Rashford and the rest of the England team, the rest of the players, and showing that they are loved, that they should keep going, and and etc. And I saw Rashford he posted this. I'm gonna read it out to you. It made me tear up a little. It really moved me, because it's just sad, everything that's been going on, and the hate and stuff. And I am going to talk about hate, and I've spoken about hate before, in many previous Weeks Cut Wednesday podcasts, but expect it to be a recurring topic, because hate's all around us. And I've said before how whether you whether you are just a little boy or girl in class, and someone behind you's hating on you, or whether you're a big celebrity. And I think when you are in the limelight, especially footballers, they're playing football. A lot of people, a lot of fans are supporting them, wanting them to win. You've also got a lot of critics, and you've got TV and all kind of stuff. you're in the limelight, and so when you get hate, it's more obvious and it probably hurts more and you see it more. But yeah, he posted this. I'm gonna read it out to you, and it just melted my heart really. But yeah, I'll read to you what he said and then address it afterwards. Okay, so it said, I don't even know where to start, and I don't even know how to put into words how I'm feeling at this exact moment. I've had a difficult season. I think that's been clear for everyone to see, and I probably went into that final with a lack of confidence. I've always backed myself for a penalty, but something didn't feel quite right. During the long run up, I was saving myself a bit of time, and unfortunately, the result was not what I wanted. I felt as though I had let my teammates down. I felt as if I'd let everyone down. A penalty was all I'd been asked to contribute for the team. I can score penalties in my sleep, so why not that one? It's been playing in my head over and over since I struck the ball, and there's probably not a word to quite describe how it feels. Final. 55 years, one penalty, history. All I can say is sorry. I wish it had gone differently. Whilst I continue to say sorry, I want to shout out my teammates. This summer has been one of the best camps I've experienced, and you've all played a role in that. A brotherhood has been built that is unbreakable. Your success is my success. Your failures are mine. I've grown into a sport where I expect to read things written about myself, whether it be the colour of my skin, where I grew up, or more recently, how I decide to spend my time off the pitch. I can take critique of my performance all day long. My penalty was not good enough. It should have gone in, but I will never apologise for who I am and where I come from. I felt no prouder moments than wearing those 3 lions on my chest and seeing my family cheer me on in a crowd of tens of thousands. I dreamt of days like this. The messages I've received today have been positively overwhelming, and seeing the response in Whittington had me on the verge of tears. The communities that always wrap their arms around me continue to hold me up. I'm Marcus Rashford, 23 years old, black man from Wingington and Wythenshawe, South Manchester. Forgive me if I said this wrong. If I have nothing else, I have that. For all the kind messages, thank you. I'll be back stronger. We'll be back stronger. MR10. Now, I don't know about you, but that really, really, really touched me. And one of the parts he says that really made me smile and really made me happy is that he will never apologize for who I am and where I come from. I will never apologize for who I am and where I come from. And he shouldn't have to. No one should have to. And I'm happy that he has put that message out there to all people out there, especially like young boys and young girls. Never be afraid, never be ashamed, never apologize for who you are and where you come from. Never forget your backgrounds, never forget your upbringings, never forget the people who were there at your lows, the people who lifted you up, the people who held your hands, so that now when you're celebrating your highs and you're up there in the world, don't forget the people who were there with you from day one. And day ones aren't literal day ones. It's just the people who have been there with you. And you know who your day ones are. Somebody can come in your life a year ago and do so much than somebody who's been in your life 5 years ago. But never apologize for who you are. And I think that's the main message of today, actually. It's not apologizing for who you are. You're all going to get sick and tired of this, but once again, I'm going to quote Jessie J, Who You Are. That song's absolutely incredible. Ever since I started that podcast, it just reminded me of how incredible that song is because I seem to put it into every single podcast. And here it is again. Don't lose who you are in the blur of the stars. Seeing is deceiving, dreaming is believing. It's okay not to be okay. Sometimes it's hard to follow your heart. Tears don't mean you're losing. Everybody's bruising. Just be true to who you are. Well, it's a new week, and if you don't know what that means, it means you haven't been listening to enough We Just Quote Wednesdays. So there'll be a bunch of We Just Quote Wednesday podcasts in the descriptions. Check them out. But a new week means a new quote of the week. And this week's quote of the week is, don't overcomplicate things. Sometimes simplicity is key. And from a person who I would call myself complicated, I think that I do overcomplicate things sometimes in life. I think I can be complicated. Sometimes all you need is simplicity, and there's a simple way of doing things, not necessarily easier, just simple. And why complicate things? Why overcomplicate things? Just be simple. Because I think simple will be simple, but I think simple is associated with boring, and it's not necessarily that. I just think you've got to simplicity is key. Sometimes there's no need to overcomplicate things. I mean, if you go for a bigger, a more complicated method and it pays off and it works, great. The quote, go big or go home. But sometimes if you do simplicity and do it well, it could be enough. I used to watch a lot of MasterChef, and sometimes contestants, even Bake Off, sometimes contestants would overcomplicate their dishes and try and take it way too far because they want to impress, but they don't do it well. Whereas someone who does simplicity, like say something simplistic, and just pulls it off really well, that gets them through. And the person who, yes, they went big or went home, but because they messed up going too big, they went home. And you've got to have that right balance. And sometimes simplicity is the way. You don't always need to overcomplicate things in life. This We Just Quote Wednesday quote of the week segment of the podcast really, I think, out of all of them, applies to me the most. I feel like, obviously, don't want to be a hypocrite. I should really take my own advice, but here I think I really am taking my own advice because I feel like I can overcomplicate things so much for no reason. And I think this quote of the week is probably the most, what's the word, not important, but the one that resonates the most with me, and I think applies to my life. Like, just don't need to complicate things. And I think, yes, the road isn't always going to be straight. It's going to be bendy and it's going to be winding, but sometimes when something is too long and too complicated and too draining, just think to yourself, is it worth it? Like, is the end really that worth it? Think to yourself, where is this leading me? Is it wasting my time? Because some things I believe should be straightforward and simple, and when they're not, something's wrong. Obviously it's not everything, and it depends on the different circumstances and situations. And the road isn't always going to be long. Isn't always going to be straight. You're going to have to put that graft in, going to put that grind, going to have to work hard. But some things, in my opinion, should be simple and straightforward. And when they're not, you've got to ask yourself why. I'm going to read you out a few quotes because obviously it's not a We Just Quote Wednesday podcast or any We Just Quoting podcast if it isn't jam-packed with quotes. So I'm going to read you some quotes. Take it as you will. But the message is not to overcomplicate simple things and to just reflect on your own life. Like this week, I want you to reflect on something and you think, this is way too complicated. Not hard work, because something being hard work and something being complicated is two different things. But think to yourself, you know what, this is actually really complicated. Should it be? And go back to square one, ask yourself why, and restart. So this first quote is a Pinterest quote. It hasn't got a name attached, but it says, everybody should smile. Life really isn't that serious. We make it hard. The sun rises, the sun sets. We just tend to complicate the process. Which I have to agree with. I believe that the process isn't even that complicated, yet we tend to overcomplicate it. Why? Who knows? But I think if we just take a step back and just like look around, it really isn't that complicated, and we should stop overcomplicating it, me especially. I feel like I'm just talking to myself in this podcast, like I said before, because I feel like this really does apply to me, and I'm sure it applies to many of you as well. And if it doesn't, I guess it's just reinforcing the things that you believe. Because if this doesn't apply to you and you don't overcomplicate, well, then it's like, yeah, already knew that. Just reinforcing that for you. Mel Gibson says, I don't make things complicated. That's the way they get all by themselves. My interpretation, I guess, like I said, like the road isn't always straight and long and things can get complicated. But I think there's no need for us to add that complication on top. It's when we make something that isn't complicated. It's like, if it's going to be complicated, it's going to be complicated all on its own. People say, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, one of those types of things. So that we don't need to complicate the process for ourselves. It's already complicated. Let's just let it be. One of those types of things. I'm not going to say much about this next one, but RM Drake says, don't think it complicates things. Just feel, and if it feels like home, then it follows a path. Then follow its path. I'm just going to leave it there because I feel like you can interpret that one for yourself. But I just feel like that one's it's really nice. It's a sweet one, actually. It's just, if it feels like home, follow its path. And I feel like, home sweet home, it's one of those ones, those type of vibes. It just, in all that craziness, you should be able to come home and be at peace. I know for everyone that isn't the case. Unfortunately, it's sad, but it should be. It should be, you have all this madness and all this craziness in the outside world, but you should be able to come home and just be at peace and be one with yourself. Confucius says, life is really simple, but we insist on making it complicated. Similar to a quote I said before, but it is. I feel like we do overcomplicate the process, and it's like, why? The reasons I might overcomplicate the process may be different to the reasons why you may overcomplicate the process, and you've got to just think to yourself and say why, why is this happening? Why are we doing this? And it's very personal to our own lives. But I'm gonna leave it there in terms of the quotes about complicating things. But the main message is just, let us just not overcomplicate things, and it's easier said than done. Is one of those type of things. But if you just look back and look at the bigger picture and look at your own life and reflect, then you can ask yourself why and how, and then change it, if that makes sense. Thank you for listening. This has been We Just Quote Wednesday. Make sure you give a like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and do all that good stuff. Look out for many podcasts in between We Just Quote Wednesdays, and stay tuned for next week's We Just Quote Wednesday. If you have any quotes, questions, or topic ideas, email them to wejustquoting@gmail.com. Thank you again for listening, and bye-bye for now. A little appreciation goes a long way.